You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hello, music fans. You are in luck because you are listening to the Modern Musicology podcast. And my name is Alan. I am here with two of my co-hosts, Rob Levy.
Hey, sup?
And Stephanie Seymour.
Hello, everybody.
And our fourth, Anthony Williams, is still on leave of absence. And we wish him the best and miss him and can't wait for him to come back. But Stephanie, you brought us a friend.
I brought my friend, my fabulous friend, Gerry Schramm, who I've known for a long, long time in another universe, not the musical universe, but the medical copy editing universe. But Gerry and I share a love of music, and Gerry has done his Something for Nothing podcast for 3 years. It's a Rush podcast. And they
I'm well aware.
Yeah, they just wrapped
I love that
it up.
podcast, buddy.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, they just wrapped it up after 175 episodes. Wow, Gerry.
I know. Tell me about it.
Yeah.
It was a hard decision, but also a relatively easy one after 175 episodes. I see, Alan, you have a 2112 album behind you. Look at that.
Yep.
So welcome,
Represent.
Gerry. We're psyched that you're here.
So after 175 episodes, you're like, what else are we going to talk about Rush?
Yeah, well, we actually didn't want to get to that point. We wanted to get to the point where we still had things to talk about. So we weren't, scraping the bottom of the barrel by episode 200, like Getty's dog walker or something.
I was going to say, what are what color shoes does Getty wear?
Right.
Yeah.
What color are Alex's eyes?
Right. Well, it's a great show, and any Rush fan who hears this should go and check it out, because even though if you're not doing it any longer, there's 175 episodes to check out. So I highly recommend it.
Thanks. I appreciate the kind words.
Okay, so this week we have. Okay, so first let me say that that we're recording the show on February 5th. So earlier this week, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame announced this year's nominees for possible induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I'm just going to read the list I was going to say no particular order, but actually I'm looking at the page that has the results of the fan vote. So this is in fan vote order.
So far.
So here are the nominees for this year's class of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame: George Michael, Cyndi Lauper, Soundgarden, Willie Nelson, Iron Maiden, Warren Zevon, Rage Against the Machine, Joy Division / New Order, Sheryl Crow, Kate Bush, The Spinners, White Stripes, Missy Elliott, and A Tribe Called Quest. So that's our list for this year. What do y'all think about it?
First, I just want to say straight out of the gate, when I look, because I've been voting pretty much every day, and I'm shocked that Kate Bush isn't higher than she is right now, especially because of the Stranger Things. It's just shocking to me. I don't know. Is anyone else? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when there are like heavy metal bands, like Iron Maiden on the list, I think that their fans just come out of the woodwork and are just like, let's get some real rock and roll in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame type of thing.
That is the predominant attitude.
I think
every single year.
Because they're Soundgarden too, right up there. But then you would sort of think Rage would be, I don't know. Well, but you're right about the real like metal fans.
Right.
Yeah. But I think a lot of this gets driven each year by the sort of like the classic rock fans, And what's interesting is that when the list first came out and the fan vote first opened, Cyndi Lauper, and this happened last year too, with Pat Benatar. Cyndi Lauper was far and away the leader in the fan vote. and like nobody was close in second place. And then George Michael picked up steam, and he's now the top of the list by like 1,500 votes or something like that. So, you know, it's fun to watch this kind of change as it goes along.
Yeah. And I'm sure like it will fluctuate a lot, but I don't know. To me, it almost seems like it's going to be an impossibility for like Kate Bush to get in. And I think she totally deserves. I mean, not that I don't think Soundgarden deserves it, but I think Kate Bush deserves it more. So I don't know.
There is definitely, they've overlooked so many people for so long.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to leave somebody out every year, but they seem to leave a lot of people out every year.
Yeah.
And so, you know, someone like Kate Bush, though, does not have the fan base, or at least the vocal fan base that, you know, Soundgarden still has, believe it or not.
And I honestly think that, this might be the case with Iron Maiden as well. I don't know that Iron Maiden will get inducted by the voting body.
Right.
I think that Iron Maiden, and especially Kate Bush, the way that she's going to get in is that the special committees are the ones who put her in, whether it be like under the Musical Influence Award or the Lifetime Achievement Award or the Excellence in whatever. I think that that's how Kate Bush is going to get put in. I don't think it'll ever be by the voting body, but I think this year, according to the voting committee, I think that this year is the strongest possibility she will ever have of getting voted in outright. And, you know, I said last year when this is her fourth nomination, and that doesn't happen very often. So I think that in itself tells you that there is a strength going into this year. But I remember last year I was saying, you know, when she didn't get in and then the Stranger Things happened, I was like, had this happened 6 months earlier, I think that would have pushed her over the top.
So here's the fundamental problem with the Hall of Fame.
One of them.
Yeah, one.
If I were to pick one fundamental problem with the Hall of Fame, it is that generally most Hall of Fames around the world, critics and industry people put everyone in. The fan vote is killing this thing because people are voting for names they recognize.
Oh, yeah.
Rather than, so I think Kate Bush has a chance to get in if you eliminate the fan vote. And I understand the fan vote is designed to get people interested, but honestly, the people that are voting most 9 out of 10 times are not musically knowledgeable, don't have any depth of anything older than 15 years, and they're going by name recognition. So I think we need to look at that because they did polls and statistics the last 2 years on the age groups of people who voted and different things that they were doing. And they're finding that the people that are voting for artists that they recognize within the last 12 to 15 years. And that they're not voting for legacy artists, and they're not voting for artists that don't have quote unquote commercial chart success. So people like Willie Nelson, for example, or Kate Bush, who don't have rock chart success, are kind of getting lost a little bit.
But Willie Nelson is number 4 in the fan vote.
Yeah.
But people know who he is. He's a cultural thing rather than, even if you don't know his music, you know who Willie Nelson is.
Well, the thing about Willie, too, is that he's got the Country Music Hall of Fame lobbying to get him in. Mm-hmm. He's got all Dolly Parton's people from last year lobbying to get him. He's got a massive lobby of online people that are trying to get him in, like the metal crowd that you had mentioned before. So I think that's the key to it.
But when also talking about, you know, artists from the last 15 or whatever years, like that's the people that that's the things that people who know recent music are going to vote for. White Stripes is at the bottom.
I know.
And that's what I mean. And
I'm okay with that.
Well, I'm not, I kind of agree because I think that they're, you know, you have to be 25 years in your career to be eligible. But there's a perception that they're too new. You know, that they haven't acquired the status that other things have.
My problem with the White Stripes is, and I love the White Stripes, right? But the problem is they only put out 6 records, right? Their active dates are 97. Their most active dates are 97 to 2011, right? But you hold up that body of work against Iron Maiden or Warren Zevon, right? Or Willie Nelson. I mean, that's the thing.
But I have to disagree in one way, because George Michael has only like had 5 albums out. I mean, he had
also has the whole
more
legacy,
with Wham.
But he has the whole legacy of Wham too.
Right. And I think
all 2 records of Wham. But I mean,
I think that this might have played out differently had it been Jack White inducted or nominated instead of under the name The White Stripes.
Right. Mm-hmm. The other thing you have to remember, though, that this is just the fan vote that we're seeing.
Yeah.
Right. There's, I don't know how many industry people, maybe 1,000, if that, vote.
Yeah.
So the fan vote is diluted considerably. So we're just seeing, like Rob said, the popular names.
Does the industry vote then get weighed more heavily than the fan votes? You know what I mean?
I think the fan vote is just one vote among all of the other votes.
It is, exactly. And so it doesn't come into play at all.
Right.
Unless, like, if you are inducting 10 people and 2 of them are at a tie when the voting body casts their vote, and you have 11 people trying to fill that 10th slot, then the fan vote can weigh toward one of those 2 ties to break the tie.
Right. But that's
the only time that the fan vote counts.
I mean, there's like at least 500 people. So basically, with the fan vote, there's 501 votes.
Right.
There's 1/500th of a
vote. It might
be
tie breaking somebody. Right. I also think one other thing that I was just thinking about in general as I was looking at this list, and as I think about it every year, I mean, I really think it shouldn't be called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I feel like they should change it to like the Popular Music Hall of Fame. I really do, because they're inducting a broad swath of popular music. They don't put classical artists in here. They don't, stuff like that. But there's rap, there's country, there's rock, there's alternative, there's everything, and it should just it's like a misnomer at this point.
Right.
Well, yeah,
kind of.
I mean, the term rock and roll, when it originated, didn't mean guitars and bass and drums. It was black music, basically.
Right.
So I don't really have, if you say rock, then you're talking about the classic rock thing and the guitars and the bass and everything. When you say rock and roll, it's sort of a big umbrella. You know what I mean?
That's true.
And I think that people get stuck on that point. Not you. I'm saying like the public.
Yeah, Steph, you're stuck.
Who are
get out of that mindset, Steph.
The best description I've heard for naming it is somebody who was a critic was talking about this once on one of the news networks, and they said that they could call it the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame of popular music, and put that at the end rather than at the beginning, because then you still keep the rock and roll.
That's interesting.
Which I think it's a tricky thing, because I think you're right, Steph. It's got to get named correctly, but at the same time, I'd rather them focus the debate on what we're naming it to, what artists should be in and shouldn't be in it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It was just a sort of a thought as I was looking at the list. And
I know. And at this point, it will never, ever get renamed. So,
So my idea, strike that from the record.
I'm sure they'll take it under consideration. I think everybody who votes, right? The 1,118 people that vote, I would venture to say at least 800 of them think it's a misnamed thing. So.
Right.
Yeah.
But, like this class in particular, like we said, not many of them have a long career, have a great, influential pedigree.
Right.
Very few of them. So I don't know how that will play into.
You know what I think is really interesting is Cyndi Lauper, because basically, I'm just going to be honest here. She had 2 albums that were big hit albums. Her first 2 ones. And everything after that is like her writing as a cultural icon.
Don't forget Kinky Boots.
Yeah.
Right.
I was going to get to that too, because that is definitely an aspect, but it's not really what's kind of considered as material that gets you into a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Right.
So I think her career is so interesting, and she's basically built more on a touring artist and getting involved in these other things. She did a country album. She did just all kinds of different things, and
also a songwriter.
Wrestler.
Yeah, some, but it's just interesting that, and when the list got first announced, I thought Cyndi is a 100% getting in this year. Like, there's not going to be one of those, oh, I didn't make it, I hope I get nominated again another year. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think she's going to be like a shoe-in. But it's just interesting that as far as like being a big musical presence, it didn't really last that long.
Don't you feel like that the same way about Soundgarden?
Yeah.
Well, I think if you're talking about, though, well, I guess not cultural influence on music in general, like long range kind of influence. I think Soundgarden, you could argue, is one of those bands.
Right.
You know, they were there at the beginning of the whole grunge movement or whatever. Yeah. They weren't the biggest band, but you know, they were, you know, they laid the foundation for something that basically changed music from then on.
I would argue to a certain extent Missy Elliott, just because the profound, when I was working in a record store, I would say I almost probably sold a Missy Elliott record every day I worked there at some point. Tribe Called Quest is hugely influential on later hip hop, but I'm not sure. It's the White Stripes thing. I'm not sure they've been around that long.
No,
right?
They've been around that long. They have.
I just mean in terms of other things, right?
Oh yeah,
in terms of albums as well.
Right.
Yeah, and you know, the Spinners are grossly underrated as an R&B group, right? The problem with the Spinners is that they had the OJs, the Four Tops, and the Temptations around at the same time, so they're kind of lost in the mix. But when you look at great vocal groups of that era and great soul bands, they're great. I think they're very good. I'm not sure they're great. But they're sort of the last of those breed of bands that's not in. But I don't, we've had this conversation before, Alan. I don't listen to tons of Iron Maiden, but even I know that they should be in.
Right.
I mean, how many hard rock, and you could argue that bands like Soundgarden wouldn't be around if there wasn't an Iron Maiden, right?
Right, absolutely.
I mean, how much work do they have to do to get in? I mean, what's great about the Hall is that sometimes I go back and revisit artists. Like I've been revisiting a lot of Iron Maiden stuff and went back and listened to a lot of Warren Zevon this week, just to kind of get a feel for, some of the artists. So it does have a positive effect on this. And I did kind of went back and look at Cyndi Lauper, and I'm glad Alan brought this up because I couldn't find anything after the first two records that really like pushed the needle for me. Right.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with someone and they're like, well, they're going to put Cyndi Lauper in, but not Madonna. And I'm like, well, they're different. There's this whole, like, what vocalist do you put in, not put in thing? And I'm like, I'm just not sure.
I think actually Madonna would be a far stronger candidate than
exactly.
Cyndi.
Yeah. And that's what that was the point, is that how's it going this way? Right. Why is it her before? But, I guess part of Cyndi Lauper's thing outside of the first two albums and the touring is her songwriting pedigree and outside work,
Plus she has those like skincare commercials now.
Yeah.
What is it?
No, it's a drug. It's for like I don't know, whatever, like a drug.
It's psoriatic arthritis.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Really?
It's something like that. It's one of those like.
Money changes everything, and you got to.
No, that's true. That's very true.
That's funny, Rob.
But also, Cyndi Lauper did pretty much anything she could do to promote that record, that first record when it came out.
Right.
From the wrestling to she was all over MTV.
Yep.
Also, those like hot hit videos and Saturday Night Video things. She actually showed up to those shows to introduce her own videos. She really worked her first
she did, and
two
albums. She was in that band for so long beforehand that just was, should have broken and didn't. So, I mean, I understand, but and I think she's definitely an influence on a lot of women.
100%.
Music, so there's definitely a place for her, I think. But I mean,
and when I said all that stuff, I wasn't saying that I don't think she should be.
Yeah.
I think that it's just an interesting way to look at,
too.
how much the actual work weighs. You know what I mean? So I want to get to another one really quickly because I think this is going to be an interesting discussion, and that is Joy Division and New Order.
I was going to just say that too.
First of all,
why together?
They're nominated together as like one unit. Should they be? Should they not be?
I don't think they should be.
Well, you know, they also did a while ago. I went to 2 induction ceremonies, and they did the small faces and the faces together.
Yes.
Which was even weirder.
Well, I think they do it in instances like that where both bands were like, Joy Division was hugely influential, but they didn't meet the criteria of 20 years and the albums, right? So this is a way of like, well, you put New Order and Joy, putting them both together sort of acknowledges both of the bands at once, and I get it. But I'm not sure you put in New Order without Joy Division yet. But I'm not, but do you put Joy Division in on their own because they weren't around? They burned out.
Well, but neither were the Sex Pistols. They were around for 5 minutes, but their impact was enormous. Yeah, and I think that's the same for the Joy Division. But I think that you could have nominated New Order on their own, but I don't think that saying New Order represents the full sort of continuity of that sort of act, Yeah. So I think that Joy Division might not have ever been nominated on their own. So I think it's good that they're being sort of coattailed with.
Yeah, and I think too, if they put in New Order, they have the baggage of Ian Curtis, and then they answer 10,000 friggin' questions about it, and people, because of the way he died and the way that band broke up, people forget what a lyricist he was, and also what a bomb that was that went off when that band broke. Right, it was just like nothing else that was around. Right. It arguably created the whole Manchester music scene that we all know and hear about now. And, it's interesting, once they put Depeche Mode in, everyone pretty much figured, okay, New Order's next. And their body of work is certainly interesting. The other subdrama of that is, will Peter Hook play and be nice? And will Peter Hook play with New Order? That is like, everyone thinks that if there's going to be an olive branch between the 2 New Order camps, that this is going to be it. So that's the whole drama of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And there are people voting for New Order and Joy Division just to have that drama play out, right? It's like their soap opera for the awards.
Like when Blondie got in, and
yeah,
she wouldn't let I can't remember who the other guy was. Frank, one of the keyboardists.
Frank Infante, I believe. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He was begging her on stage, and she was like, "Nope." No way. It was really uncomfortable.
Really? Were you at that one?
No, you have to look it up though. It's incredibly uncomfortable.
Oh, okay.
Last year, Pat Benatar she started in 78 or 9. I don't remember when the first album came out. But she and Neil, her husband and guitar player and co-songwriter and blah, 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 were inducted as a duo.
Yes.
So none of the band members got included in the induction, which I thought was a really interesting move because their original lineup was together for 5 years or so. They were definitely part of that sound, of Pat's first 4 or 5 albums.
Definitely, like Myron Grombacher and all.
Well, and it was a super classy move that they had Myron come and play on stage in their performance, at least, because, they're best friends and he's the godfather of their kids and all this kind of stuff. But he was part of that original lineup of band members that didn't get included by them being counted only as a duo.
Mm-hmm.
Well, which I thought was super interesting.
Here's a strange thing: is Bruce Springsteen got in very early. He got in the 80s, I think, right, late 80s. But the E Street Band wasn't inducted until like 2014 or something like that, because their name wasn't on any album until the double live album or the triple live album from the late 80s. Okay. So their 25 years started then. Yeah. So when 25 years passed, so probably her backing band had no chance of getting in because she didn't have a name. They didn't have a name for the band.
Yeah.
It's not like the Attractions or something like that,
Yeah, that's true. But when Alice Cooper got in, the band was originally called Alice Cooper.
That's true.
And then when he went solo, he just basically took the name with him. And right. I am now Alice. I mean, he was always Alice Cooper, but he was just the singer in the band Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting situation as well.
Yeah, I don't know what the criteria, how they would pick, something like that. Maybe
whatever they want.
Well, and that's really the case because there's been so many different combinations of people. Like when Yes was inducted, it was original lineup plus some of the 80s people, because Trevor Rabin was a huge part of Yes's. But in a lot of the cases, you don't get anything but the original lineup. When Heart was inducted, their original lineup was included, and they said, well, we want to include the two guys who came in the 80s because they were part of our enormous success in the 80s, and the Rock Hall said no.
Yeah.
So why would Trevor Rabin be included if those other two guys weren't? Well, because he was a songwriter and a lead singer, that's why.
Right. Well, we had the same discussion on our podcast about whether or not John Rutsey should have been inducted with Rush.
Sure, of course.
Sorry, Steph, we're talking about Rush. I'm sorry.
So that's going to hijack the show.
There was going to be on a tangent. And, there's a case to be made that he was with the band for a very long time, from like 68 till 74, which is a very long time to be with the band. But he only recorded the one album, and it's probably Rush's weakest album. And not the ones that they're really known for that made them Rush. So, I don't know.
Exactly.
I think it's like subjective, real subjective.
It is, exactly. They didn't become Rush until Neil Peart joined the following year and recorded the second album and wrote all the lyrics and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, but I think Rutsey 100% should have been included.
So do I.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Right on.
But, Kiss was inducted and only the 4 members were inducted.
Yes,
the original 4 members. And it was Gene Simmons wanted, I think, Eric Carr to be inducted as well, but the Hall said no. I don't know why the Hall has veto power over who gets in when the band wants them to get in. I don't understand that at all.
And the interesting thing is that Eric Carr was in the band as the drummer longer than Peter Criss was.
Also, like, seriously, what is it to the Hall of Fame if the band wants one more guy in,
Right. I guess they have to produce one more trophy. Oh, we don't want to produce another trophy.
What do you get for getting in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Do you get a trophy?
You get that little trophy. I don't know if everyone in the band does,
maybe
but
a bag of frozen peas. What?
Hug and a Happy Meal.
Hug and a Happy Meal.
Certainly worthwhile.
Yeah.
I think I'm going back to Warren Zevon again. I mean, I think just on the strength of that last album, which is heartbreakingly amazing and sad, and that song, "Keep Me in Your Heart." Oh, that alone should get the guy in. But he had, I don't know, 10, 12 albums. So he talk about a body of work. He really
and had big hits that other artists had recorded.
Yeah, songwriter.
And also hugely influential on everyone from Sufjan Stevens to Beck to later.
Yeah.
So
right. And I think that he, regardless of where he shows up in the fan vote, and there is a big fan community, there's a big push for Zevon, and I think that he is going to get in, whether it be through the voting body or it's through one of the special committees. I think that he will get in because this has been long overdue.
I agree.
And I think that he is just one of those figures that, is so important that I don't know. He might not. I shouldn't say that I think he will.
I think he will. I think he will too. I just want to do this. Touches on the generational gap because when Gerry and I were talking on the phone yesterday, and his daughter is Emma 17 now, right, Gerry?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So Emma was reading out the list of all the inductees, and it was so cute because she said Warren Zevon because she doesn't know who, right? So I think there's a whole thing about who's voting, fan wise, just who's voting.
Yeah.
I think generally, I feel like older people like our age are the voters rather than, maybe teenagers. I could be wrong. Does she vote, Gerry? Does
I
she
don't
care?
think she's voted. She doesn't care. No.
Yeah.
I mean, probably from the
it...
list, the only people she knows would be Maiden because I listen to them, and Rage Against the Machine because I listen to them a lot, Soundgarden, and the Stripes.
Right.
But for teenagers, nobody from their generation gets inducted because you have to be at least 25 years into your career.
True.
So you aren't going to see Dua Lipa or
they don't care.
whoever.
They might not care as much anyway.
Exactly. Right. It's not really geared toward them. It's someone who's been invested in the music scene for longer.
Yeah.
And this is where it's going to get interesting too, because the music careers now of artists are not as long, and the sort of public absorption of popular music and keeping it around is much shorter because of the whole development of short attention spans. So are they going to have to amend that 25-year thing later? I mean, there's somebody like Taylor Swift that obviously would meet that, right? Mm-hmm. But then, what do you do about musicians later that, had like 20 or 30 pop hits in like a 7-year span and just didn't do anything, right?
Right.
It's going to get interesting in about 10 years.
Look at the Beatles.
But the Beatles are the Beatles.
Relatively short career, but a shit ton of hits and stuff.
Yeah. I'm personally rooting for Sheryl Crow too, because I just think she's got an amazing bunch of albums. She's a really great songwriter. She's got a crazy ass voice. Like, it's so good. And I don't know, she to me is somebody who really deserves it. So I hope she gets in.
Well, when it comes to influence, has she been a big influence
on me? Well, I'll say on me she has.
Of course you, but I mean, like, if it's one of the things we bemoan about the inductees is that who has the influence of their their career to influence other people to get in the first place. Has Sheryl Crow done that? Does she have that kind of influence on people? Has she influenced a bunch of people?
I think she has.
That's an interesting point, because that's something that, I'm in a lot of like Facebook groups and stuff for classic rock bands. And, they always make these lists, and fucking Eddie Trunk too, always makes these lists of people who are real rock bands who aren't in the Hall of Fame. And a lot of the same names keep coming up. Styx, REO Speedwagon, those kind of bands. And I am a huge Styx fan, but do they really need to be in the? I mean, not every band that's ever existed can be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I know. We don't need Jackal in the Hall of Fame. You know what I mean?
I'm going to debate you on that. No, I'm.
What about White Lion?
White Lion?
White Lion.
Come on, really?
No, thank you.
Kicks.
Kicks, right?
Jesus.
2 X's in Kicks.
Otherwise it's a breakfast cereal.
I think if you look at artists like Angel Olsen or Sharon Van Etten or Phoebe Bridgers now, you can see the influence of Sheryl Crow, whether or not that is enough to get her in or not. But there really hasn't. Steph, please don't fight me.
I won't fight you.
I would argue that probably we haven't really looked at the singer-songwriter the same way since the female singer-songwriter the same way since the start of the Me Too movement, right? I think that sort of galvanized critics and music consumers and musicians about how they look at women who write songs. And Sheryl Crow was doing all of that way before this whole movement. She was saying the same things, the same messages, and standing up for the same stuff before that movement sort of started. So I think that might be one of the things that might get her a little more attention.
That's interesting. I didn't think about it like that.
That's a possibility.
I just don't think she's going to get in. I think she should, but I just don't think she will.
I think it'll be like on another year when she's nominated again.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't think it's going to be first time in.
Yeah.
So she's
most of this list, like 8 of these, I think it's 8 or 10 of these are first time nominations.
Okay.
Which is except for that first year that they ever did, the first few years. This is kind of a brand new list in a lot of ways.
And I think too, and I purposely haven't talked to a couple of people I know who vote to get their opinions, because I wanted a sort of fresh perspective that was untainted. But I often wonder too that if the critics who are voting are like, okay, let's get Kate Bush and Warren Zevon in, and then we're done with these conversations. and then we can move on to other ones
because they need to get in because, you know.
Well, every year we have these conversations about artists that need to get in, but there are certain ones that keep coming up every single year. And after a while, it's like, guys, you got to deal with this. Right.
Well, Rush was one of those.
Yeah.
That kept coming up because they kept not getting nominated.
Yeah, not even nominated.
Right. And Kiss for the longest time, you know, and there's a lot of them that finally did get in. Yes was one of them. And the bullshit about that is that they farted around for 10 or more years to nominate Yes, and it wasn't until after the founder, Chris Squire, died that they got in.
Yeah. That's sad.
Yeah. The only guy to be on every record.
He was the only guy who was the whole time.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about Rage? Because I feel like they're super influential, but do you?
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
They were, I guess, rap metal.
Yeah.
Not like the crappy rap metal. You
totally.
know, they weren't Limp Bizkit.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, no way. Like, I think I talked about this on a previous podcast. Like, you could feel the rage, the literal rage that Zach's, voice conveyed, and they were fucking pissed.
And Morello too. I mean, just he's like, this might sound like sacrilege to some of you, but guitar-wise, he's like Hendrix, for Christ's sake. You know what I mean? Like, he took the instrument to a completely different level.
I think if you put the Foo Fighters in, you have to put Rage in.
Yeah.
But I think that they brought a sense of social commentary and social awareness to music that at the time was not being done. And I think, Rage really sort of, what people don't really think about is Rage had a profound influence on a lot of hip hop artists.
Oh, yeah.
And how they used outside sources like guitars and production, and also, just getting their message out there, because they were in your face. They were really, really in your face, way more than any other band at their time. Much more so than like Soundgarden. But I don't know if that is going to hurt them, because sometimes people don't like bands that have an agenda, right? So I don't know if that hurts them or not. It shouldn't, right?
But at the same time, I think the Rock Hall eats that shit up.
Yeah.
They eat up crossing genres, and they eat up having a social message, because at the very least it produces a good soundbite for when you're doing your video package to introduce the act and give the little history of the act. I think that's where that's a definite strength for them.
And I would like it to be, but there's a lot of conservative people that are voting for the Hall. It was difficult, for a lot of other artists to come in that had social messaging, because this old vanguard group of people would just fly their flag on they were too controversial. It's just like, come on. They're good. I'm not sure that they're in the first ballot, though. I just don't. Yeah,
I can see that happening.
It just reminds me of this thing on Twitter once, is that when it was a few years ago and Tom Morello, was being Tom Morello, right? And somebody tweeted at him, I love Rage Against the Machine, but keep your politics to yourself.
Oh, right.
And so somebody responded, what do you think they were raging against? Washing machines?
I remember that. That was so funny.
That's so genius.
But I would love to see.
Did you ever listen to one song?
Yeah, have you ever listened to one song? I just saw them when they on their tour this past year, and they were still as great as ever. I mean, they only had 4 albums, and one of them was a covers album.
Yeah.
So, but the songs that are on those albums, are unbelievable.
I wonder if they have a fan base that's going like Iron Maiden, does to propel them a bit.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, they toured. They haven't had an album out since, I don't know, what, the late 90s, maybe? I don't know when Renegades was the last one. That was the covers album. I'm not sure when it came out.
Yeah.
But they haven't been around in 20 plus years, and they were still selling out, Madison Square Garden. So,
right, exactly.
Just a huge generational artist that I think left such a impact on the people that listen to them, that I think that's their strength.
And the music that came after, and
the fact that the bands that sort of copy their style were also so incredibly fucking horrible.
Yeah,
But it made
really.
them sound like Korn, Stain, Limp Bizkit. You know,
I thought you said Sting. I'm like, no. What?
I think, I mean, it's like there's so many of those like new metal band things that came up. Oh God, it was horrible.
Yeah, terrible stuff.
Yeah.
Basically like Woodstock 99. I know.
Right. Woodstock
we were talking
99.
about that on our other podcast. But
So Gerry, I want you to tell us a little bit about your experience going to the induction ceremonies that you saw.
Oh, well, the first one I went to, of course, I went to see Rush.
Well,
so we flew out to LA, and that was great because it was Rush, but it was also Heart.
Yeah.
I can't remember who else is on there. Randy Newman was there.
Mm-hmm.
Donna Summer, Albert King, and Public Enemy. That was the other one.
Great.
Right. Okay.
Going there is great. Like I shit on Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for a long time, because of all the stupid politics like we were talking about. But going there is great. Going to the induction ceremony is great. It's a little long.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's over long. And then I went the year Rush was inducted, and then I think I went the following year when Nirvana was inducted. That was in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also when the E Street Band was inducted, and Bruce and the E Street Band played for like 45 minutes and ruined the whole freaking show.
Oh.
It was so long. It took so long. I mean, Rosalita by itself was like 12 minutes.
Right.
And they played 2 other songs. It's like Bruce. But, it's great because the place is filled with music fans.
Right. I have a question. I always wonder about this. Are you in the balcony? Is that where you sit?
Yeah.
Okay. So, is it only fans up there, or what? How do they seat people? What is this what seating arrangement for that whole thing?
I'm sure on the floors,
it's all stars. There's no fans on the floor.
No, I think it's all industry people.
Huh. Okay.
At the tables, definitely. There are tables in the front, so that's all the nominees and all the presenters and anybody who's anybody. Do you know what I mean?
But you don't.
John Mayer was there one year. You know what I mean? Like people who just have. I'm just saying the people who are just like in the business.
But you don't see who's really behind those tables. So I was just wondering, do fans get to sit right there, or no? Is that probably?
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
No, I think they only sell the tickets. In the peanut gallery to the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
But it's great because everybody's there. Sometimes you go to concerts and people are talking throughout the concert. I don't know why, but people are there to see music.
Yeah,
music fans. So it's great. I recommend everybody go, even though I don't like the Hall of Fame. And I recommend you go to the actual Hall of Fame. Have you ever been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
No, I was hoping to this year, and I did not get to go. So next year, that's my goal. And I'm hoping that the induction ceremony is back at the Rock Hall this next time, because I wanted to go to see that. And I was so big on seeing last year's show, and it ended up being in LA, and it was I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that it's going to be at the Rock Hall again.
The museum, obviously, I was dead set against going to see the museum, a rock and roll museum.
Yeah.
But when I got there, I loved it.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
I can't wait to see it.
The things that they have on display. They had the couch that Jimi Hendrix used to practice on when he was a kid from his living room. They had an invitation to Janis Joplin's funeral.
Oh my God.
Wow.
They had the acoustic guitar that Tom Morello wrote Killing in the Name of on.
Wow.
And they also had like U2's, like those cars, I think that they hung up from the ceiling. I think it was on, I don't know if it was on Achtung Baby tour. So they had those hanging from the ceiling. I mean, it was just incredible.
And when have you gone in recent years when the big Beatles exhibition has opened?
No. Oh, they had Ringo's original drum kit too.
Yeah, but apparently the current Beatles exhibition is like off the chart.
Really?
And I can't wait to see that.
Yeah. It was amazing.
Rob, you've been or you haven't?
We're going in June.
Okay.
There's a guy I used to work with who is in their PR department, and I'm hoping that find a time to get in when it's not crowded. And
Yeah.
I'm planning 2 days for it. So
yeah, you definitely need 2 days.
I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a lot like when I went to the Country Music Hall of Fame when I was in Nashville. It was a day and a half, and it was awesome. When I went to DC and went to the Smithsonian and saw like a lot of their popular music stuff, it was awesome. But I think this is going to like take all of that and like magnify it.
Yeah.
I had a 20-minute conversation with one of the docents, just like the people who volunteer to walk around and point things out to you, because they had AC/DC in this display as a heavy metal band. And I was like, this isn't a heavy metal band. And we talked for like 20 minutes. He was just like, well, they're info. I'm like, no, they're not a heavy metal band. And we just had like this mini argument about AC/DC being a heavy metal band and not.
When I retire from my profession, I am going to move and I am going to be a volunteer docent for the Rock Hall, and I will be the ultimate authority on every act that's ever been inducted and is on display. And I will have those debates with anybody who wants to have those debates.
So
I came home and said the same thing to my wife. I said, when I'm retired, I'm moving to Cleveland, baby, and I'm going to be a docent at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Cleveland's pretty great, but so I look forward to coming up and bothering Alan and questioning the merits of Chilliwack being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Pablo Cruz. So,
right on, Pablo Cruz, man, come on. I mean, here I say that I'm in Atlanta. I say, when I retire, I'm going to volunteer at the aquarium or at the art museum. No, I think I've changed my mind. I think I'm just going to move to Cleveland and just immerse myself in rock and roll.
This conversation has changed Alan's life path.
And that's the power of our podcast. It is literally life-changing.
So I have one question. What's one band that you think deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that you think will never be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Because I have one. Steph knows how much I love the Indigo Girls.
Oh yeah, you guys have that in common.
Buddy.
I forgot to tell
really?
You. Yeah, you guys have the same weird taste where you like love and Rush, and then you love the Indigo Girls and stuff like that.
We've seen them for the first time in a couple of weeks.
Oh my God, they're so good.
I love them so much.
But I don't think they'll ever get in, even though I think they should get in.
I think they should too. I think you're right, and I think equally the B-52s.
Oh yeah,
52s.
I'm actually in a Facebook group like that about making them a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Not even a nomination, but they're not. I don't have they ever been nominated?
I don't think so.
I don't think they have, but whatever. They should totally be in. It's ridiculous. Oh no, maybe they were nominated last year. I feel like it was last year or the year before. But...
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
I don't remember. I'll have to go back and look, but I don't remember them being. They're a unique band.
Right.
So I would love to see them in, but I don't think it'll ever happen, and that's okay. That's fine.
I off the top of my head, Sonic Youth.
Sonic,
or My Bloody Valentine, although realistically, no, but because of their influence on that particular genre of music, I don't know how you represent, that sort of trip hop movement. I don't necessarily think Portishead or Massive Attack deserves to go in. I'm not sure, but then you've got all these like synthesizer keyboard guys from the 80s and 90s. Like, what do you do with OMD? What do you do with Soft Cell? What do you do with the Pet Shop Boys? What do you do with Erasure?
And some of those I don't know that need to be in.
I just saying.
But at the same time, I was completely shocked when Kraftwerk got in.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I don't think they deserve it. I just was surprised that anybody on the voting committee felt strongly enough to A, put them on the ticket, and then B, get enough people to vote for them. I was just shocked.
I wish Anthony was here now, but Sparks, mainly because of the longevity and the output, and now that they're writing a musical, their second musical, and they made a musical and a film now, and then also just the insane amount of influence they've had on everybody after them. What do you do with like, I'd love to see Laurie Anderson in, but she's so friggin' weird to like half the world,
I I would like to see, I don't think they are, and I don't even think they've been nominated, but X, because to me, they were a really super influential band. A lot of punk bands and bands thereafter that didn't follow the punk route, you know?
And I think they go in, you know, especially when you look at, you know, the fact of just what they did for that LA scene as well, you know? And there wouldn't be a Hole, for example, without an X, right? No, I'm just trying to boil this down to the most common thread. I would argue, although they only had the output is not strong enough, but I would argue that maybe the Aquanettas should go in.
God.
But you know, I also
all of our 1.5 albums.
Yeah. I think Linda Perry should go in.
You do?
Just for the amount of work, she's probably more of a target for the Songwriting Hall of Fame.
Songwriting, yeah, that's
so
right.
Come to think of it, but there's a lot of artists like that like had recording careers that were okay but not great.
Yeah,
but it's so many other things. Yeah. So thankfully, we also have the Songwriting Hall of Fame. So she's probably
she would qualify for that, I think.
Yeah. You know, I don't know what you do with like Bjork.
Nothing.
You know, but there are a lot of people. There's a lot of people. The Greg Koch just wrote a really great argument this week in the Tribune for why Bjork needs to go in, and I think it's Greg Koch. Or was it Jim Fuseli? One of these big music writers this week wrote a thing about why, and it kind of made me like go, oh yeah, wait a minute. You know, I think, you know, there's a lot of people that overlook, like, you know, Thelma Houston or artists like that. There's a lot of these like 70s R&B singers that are sort of not getting properly looked at. Bobby Womack. I'm not sure if Bobby Womack's in.
All right. Well, okay. I think that's going to wrap it up for this week. That was a great discussion, and I can't wait to see which of this list of people actually gets nominated. Maybe we'll do another show then when it comes down to nomination time or induction or whatever. I don't know. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with our picks of the week. So stay tuned.
Drew Leiter here, inviting you to join Cletus Jacobs and I as we journey into a new era of the DC Universe, Dawn of the DC. Join us each week as we review comics, television, and movies. There might even be a surprise guest or two along the way. Thanks for your continued support, and we look forward to talking more DC with you. The Earth Station DCU podcast comes out weekly and is part of the ESO Network.
All right, we're back. So, Rob, there is someone that you wanted to discuss before we go into our picks of the week. So take it away.
Yeah. So January 28th, we lost Barrett Strong. You know, this year's been terrible because we're losing people like Tom Verlaine and all these like huge artists, but we're also losing all of these incredible songwriters and people that sort of made records that we all sort of just know in popular culture. Barrett Strong was a house songwriter for Tamiya and Motown Records. And in addition to making his own records, right? Like Money, That's What I Want. That's his biggest single for himself. But I heard it through the grapevine. War, Just My Imagination, Ball of Confusion, Papa Was a Rolling Stone. I'll stop there. But he wrote like just a ton of records. His output of music, even some that he did with Norman Whitfield, it's insanely prolific. And I just wanted to acknowledge that because it's, you know, these artists that write songs are sometimes overlooked, but when their canon of work is that robust, I think it's kind of something that needs to be mentioned. So,
definitely.
Yeah.
Something, especially like I said before, when you were reading that list to us, even one of those songs is, you know, is amazing.
And, you know, I heard The Grapevine was a hit for two people. So yeah, we're just losing a lot of really important people, and it's very sad.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's jump from that into our picks of the week. What have we been listening to? What have we been reading? What have we been watching this past week? Who wants to take it away? Jerry,
let Jerry go.
Why don't you do it?
Take it away. Okay.
Why don't you? What have you been consuming this week?
I was listening to a band called Inhaler. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Yes, buddy.
They have a new, I don't know if it's an EP. It's like 3 songs on it that I just saw the other day. Especially a song called Love Will Get You There, I think, or something like that. Now, Inhaler, the lead singer of Inhaler is Bono's son.
Yeah.
Right.
Elijah. So he sounds exactly like Bono. So if you could just kind of get past that just a little bit, and forget that it's not, but he sounds, I'm telling you,
Wow.
Stephanie, exactly.
Oh my God. Okay. I have to hear it.
It's crazy.
Yeah, they're really good.
They're really good. And I was also listening to this guy named Andrew Bird. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd only heard about him like a month ago.
Oh, cool.
So I've been listening to one of his albums constantly.
He's been around for a few minutes.
Yeah, he's been around for a while.
Yeah.
I'm surprised I never heard of him before.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm watching that show. Was it The Story of Us? No, not The Story of Us.
Oh, The Last of Us.
The Last of Us.
Yeah, that's been getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, it's like The Walking Dead, only good.
Yeah, I do want to see it. Yeah,
So,
and
cool.
There was a Linda Ronstadt song that featured in this past week's episode that's been getting a lot of attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so good for her.
Yep. Cool.
All right, Steph.
All right. Rob turned me onto a band, which I should know because they've been around since 1993.
Wow.
So where have I been? But it's Quasi.
Yeah.
From Portland. And the song that he sent me is called Doom Scrollers, which I actually was just watching the video kind of obsessively because it is like, to me, it just reminds me of like an anti Tears for Fears sowing the seeds of love. It's like that kind of animation, but it's all really crazy, like dark. And one spot on amazing little feature in that video is that there's multiplying lanternflies throughout the video, which is just like so perfect. It was just such a little great touch, but there's a lot of little weird great touches in the video. So it's a pretty dark song, but I really liked the harmonies, and I thought that it was so catchy. After just one listen, I felt like I knew the song. So the album's coming out. It's called Breaking the Balls of History. That's coming out on the 10th.
What a great title.
That is like amazing title.
I love it.
It's a genius. Just for the album title alone, I would buy it. And it's coming out on the 10th on Sub Pop. And I want to say that we also watched a movie last night called Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah.
That was great.
And I was thinking as I was watching the movie that I feel like the Quasi song should be the soundtrack for that movie because it was like they kind of matched up in this weird way. I mean, I don't know, that movie was so moving. To me, it was a whole bunch of stories, like a love story. It was a mother-daughter relationship story. It was a family relationship story. And it was just also like, why the fuck are we on this earth kind of story? Why are we in existence? And it blew me away. I can't even imagine what the budget for that film must have been to put that together. It blew me away. So those two things are my picks.
All right. Robert.
So I'm going to go to the first place we don't think of when we think of new music coming from, and that is Costa Rica. There's a band called Los Robertos, and they've signed with K9, and their album is out here. It's called Love Is the Answer. It's sort of like hazy and distorted kind of rock and roll stuff. You'd love it. It's sort of like,
you played them on your show this week, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
I heard it. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's produced by Owen Morris, who produced The Verve and Oasis and a lot of those bands. So they put out a bunch of EPs before, but it's a case of a producer getting them in a studio and really focusing their sound and getting them to like make a record that's not all over the place, right? And it's really good. So I want to recommend that. Also, I'm not sure if anybody here has ever heard of this guy. His name is John Cale. He's been making records for about 60 years. But his new album, Mercy, it's his 17th album. And he's got actress, Fat White Family, Animal Collective, and a bunch of other people on it too. He hasn't made a record, I think, in 10 years, but it's really, really good. So I want to recommend that. One of the things that needs to stop people is stop putting things on cassette only. I got multiple labels this week send me releases on cassettes, and they didn't put they're not releasing it in a digital format. It's only going to be on the cassette.
Really?
Right? Which is like, what are you doing? Right.
Right.
But having said that, there's a band called Weird Numbers. They're from Seattle and they live in LA, and they have a self-titled thing coming out. They have a song though called Soda that's actually really, really good. It's really good sort of post-punk. It'd be great if they like made it in a format people could hear, but it's really terrific. So I want to recommend that. And then this week we got a drop of just a tasting, I think 4 to 6 songs from Boy Genius, which I'm super excited about.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
I'm so excited. It's a super group of Lucy Dacus, Phoebe Bridgers, and Julian Baker. The album's coming out, I think, March 3rd. It's called The Record. And they have a song that's sort of out now that's really making the rounds called $20. But it's really amazing. It's a record you probably need to listen to.
And they've been getting a hell of a lot of press. Yeah. Like there's been a big press push on this past week. Magazine covers and all kinds of stuff. So yeah.
It's really, it's from what I've heard, it's incredible, and I'm really looking forward to that. And then the last thing is something. It's a deep dive I did not expect to take this week. 40 years ago, this week, Karen Carpenter died.
Yeah, that's right.
And I've heard the hits. I grew up hearing them in the house and stuff. But I finally dug into the Essential Carpenters, which apparently I own.
There you go.
And so
on cassette.
8-track, 8-track and reel to reel, and then a mini disc. But I sort of started to listen to some of those songs again, right? And it's just like, wow,
it's a great compilation.
What an amazing singer. And just, you talk about two people that just have a chemistry for making records. I mean, you talk about the White Stripes being, go back and look at the Carpenters kids and come back.
Hell yeah.
So, yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And speaking of somebody who's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
All right. That's a good list of stuff. Okay. So I was going to say this week, but actually today, February 5th, the second single from Peter Gabriel's upcoming album. The song is called The Court.
So cool.
And it came out today on a Sunday, oddly enough. At the same time, a video came out, the sort of a behind the scenes of the making of the song and what the song is about and all this kind of stuff. Oh, so good.
Good.
My God, it's so good. This album, of course, he hasn't done a new album in 20 years. So this album is like, when you say long awaited, this one is long awaited. And what we heard from it so far, the first 2 singles that have been out are just phenomenal. And I think this one is even better than the first single he put out. I think this is just killer.
Yeah.
And I am super excited to hear the rest of this album. So looking forward to that. And really, other than that, this week, I've been in a super classical mood. I've been in a real symphonic mood. So I've been digging into a lot of my collection and just going back to, those younger bands, those early influencers like Beethoven and Shostakovich and all those guys. And over COVID, well, I always like to do these stupid little countdowns on my Facebook page, like my top 10 favorite whatever the fucks. And so over COVID, I did a bunch of them just to keep myself busy, just to entertain myself. And I was doing my 50 favorite prog rock epics and all this kind of shit. So I've actually put together a list of my top 10 favorite symphonies. And then I'm working on a top 10 list of my favorite non-symphony symphonic works that I will probably put out at some point. But I've been in just a big orchestral mood this week. So that's been a lot of my listening, Brahms and, all that kind of stuff.
If you love that world, Alan, you should probably see Tar.
Oh, that's on my list to see.
We saw that this week or last week.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting sort of world.
Yeah.
That movie functions in. But if you love classical music, you'll love that.
Yeah. All right. So that is us for this week. So before we cut out, let's all say where people can find more about us. Steph, get it rolling.
All right. You can find me on Facebook at Stephanie Seymour Music, on Instagram at there_r_birds. I have a website also, therearebirds.com. And you can find me on Bandcamp under my name, and all the streaming platforms too.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Okay, Rob.
Hey, kids. You can find me on the Book of Face and Twitter and posts under my name. Also, if you have a radio or a device that plays audio sounds, not a telegraph.
Or a cassette player.
You can listen to me on the radio on Wednesdays from 7 to 9 Central on Juxtaposition on KDHX. If you're busy or working or have a life, the shows are archived for 2 weeks. So you can go back and listen to any show that you want for 2 weeks and kind of check that out and go from there.
I am going to interject at this point that our buddy Anthony, who is normally with us, has another podcast called Watchers in the Fourth Dimension, and it is a watch through of Doctor Who from the very beginning. And they are currently in season 13, which is Tom Baker's second season. And it's a fantastic show. So if you're a Doctor Who fan, go look for that. Gerry, where can people hunt you down?
Well, you can listen to all 175 episodes if you want to, which surprisingly people are still doing. I'm very surprised.
Oh, I'm sure.
At somethingfornothing.podbean.com or just in any of your podcasting apps. Something for Nothing, a Rush Fancast.
Awesome. Great show, by the way. And so I've got a website that I've spent a lot of yesterday revamping. It is now called Cosmic Creative. Cosmic is spelled with a K and a Z for some stupid ass reason. CosmicCreative.com. And it's a big conglomeration of all my books, all the books by other authors that I've published, and all the podcasts that I do. So go check that out. Okay, we will be back next week. And next week, I'm so excited because it's one of our yearly anniversary shows. We're going to dial the knob on our time machine back 50 years, and we're going to talk about the albums of 1973. Can't wait. Till then, everybody have a great week. Keep rocking on, and we will see you around the bend. Take care.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.